Welcome one, welcome all to the greatest show of them all. This is volume 99, the last one in the double digits of the NFC East Mixtape. You can listen to this show on any one of SB Nation's NFC East blog podcast networks. That is Blogging the Boys for Dallas Cowboys coverage, Bleeding Green Nation for Philadelphia Eagles, Hogs Haven for the Washington Commanders, or Big Blue View for the New York Football Giants. You can also watch this show on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from BGN. I am RJ Ochoa from BTB. And Brandon, I'm not here to be a jerk. Philadelphia Eagles lost the Super Bowl. I have a lot to say, and we have a lot to get to. There's actually some other NFC East things to touch on as well, but obviously it's been a long few days for you, I imagine. Lots of content you have been grinding away at.
No, not even, RJ. I'm exhausted. I'm very, it's not like, I'm so sad or angry. It's really not the tone. I'm really tired. And I think part of it is how it ended, in the sense of, it's like I think back to, going to Cleveland and Miami and watching the training camp practices. And then obviously just the training camp practices in Philly as well in late July. And, you go through all this from all that time ago, and so many things have happened in that time span, like in life in general. It's not even talking about football as well. And it's just kind of weird for it to all end so anticlimactic. It's like that's what all this was leading to, this very historical, maybe the best Eagles season finish aside of my lifetime. And it just ends like that. And it's like, okay, weird ending. And also just not even ready for me personally, at least. I think other people have turned the page quicker than me, like talking about mock drafts.
Right.
Like I could just not care less about that right now. Like I just want to almost just like just F that. Like I don't effing care about my mock draft. Who cares? I don't freaking care about that right now. I mean, I'll work up to the point of caring about that closer, maybe in a week, or I don't know when it'll take, but it's just like, no, like I'm supposed to care about that. And just like get mentally geared up right away for another long process like this, just to have it potentially end like that. The last thing I want to say here, because I know I've been going on long, is that it's almost just like, and I'm going to have some dramatic comparisons, I'm sure, on this show. And one of them is like it's just akin to me for like someone being like, let's say I was married, and God forbid my spouse died, and then like someone the day after the funeral was like, so you're thinking about dating, or are you on the after? It's like, bro, like my partner just died. Like I don't want to talk about that right now. I'm not ready to. Me personally, I'm not ready to move on. So, yeah, that's where I'm
at. Well, we are recording on Valentine's Day, so a very romantic analogy from Brandon Lee Gowton, right there. Happy Valentine's Day to you, Brandon. Certainly, it was anticlimactic. Obviously, we'll touch on the penalty a little bit. You've touched on it a lot at BGN Radio, and everybody at BGN has done so. I touched on it with Jeremy Reisman on Monday Football Monday on the SB Nation NFL show. If anybody wants to listen to that, we did have Pete Sweeney on, who was wrong. Thought the Chiefs would win this going away. I would say the Chiefs, really just kind of came in and stole this at the very end. So Pete was wrong in that sense. But, I was right. I thought the Chiefs would win in a close game. Not that was like a vogue, or that was a vogue opinion. It wasn't like, incredibly rare. But it did feel like, I mean, like you mentioned the length of the Eagles season. And I think it's important to talk about life. And we talk about that a lot, right? Like how married, no pun intended, to what we're talking about here. What we do for a living is with our lives. Like, I was going to come in here and make like an Astros joke, like the whole like Phillies postseason run happened and all that, right? Like how many seasons of Survivor did we watch and finish in the Eagles run, right? Like how many, I don't know, like other personal journeys were you on, like, whatever the case may be. And for it to end is just a difficult pill to swallow. However it ends, even if it ends the way you want it to end. I was struck. I was reading Bo Wolf's recap at The Athletic, and he reminded me, I mean, I obviously knew this, but just like reading the Jason Kelce quote, that this was the second loss that the Eagles had with Jalen Hurts specifically. And so like, in addition to what you're talking about, how it is this like finality, it's also like a rare thing, right? Right. Like how do you process this? Like, and so for it to happen in this game of all games is like, and I'm not the biggest college football fan. I know you aren't either, but like, that's kind of how college seasons go, right? Like you're just like, the whole season is win, 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 and then one loss. And that one loss is the loss. And so that can be a tough thing.
Yeah, and let's get into the penalty. Look, everyone's like, "Oh, James Bradbury said it's penalty, so it's penalty." I mean, like, come on. Like, what is? I hate to be the "what is he going to say" guy, but what is he going to say? Like, he's literally incentivized to not say otherwise because you get fined if you criticize the refs. Now, he could have said something, I guess, else that wasn't critical, but I also think you need to say the tone. He wasn't like enthusiastically like defending the refs, like the context. Or with the removing the contest might make it seem on like just as what he had to say on Twitter. And look, that was the only defensive holding call of the game. And I know you said on the SB Nation NFL show, and I know our good friend Stats shared this opinion. And like, I get what you're saying in terms of it's not about like, oh, you can't call that there in that spot. It's not about that. It's less about that and more about, I think it's hard for that to be the first defensive penalty call because it's like, okay, this really didn't happen the rest of the game at all. This is the one and only time this happened. And look, just rewatch the play. It was not egregious. It really was not at all. And if the context of that game and part of what Bradbury said, like he basically admitted he was holding earlier in the game a lot, or at least more than once. And that it seemed to kind of be how the refs were officiating this game. They were letting him play. And even look at Juju's reaction after that pass is incomplete. He looks more bummed to me that it's incomplete than he is like outraged that he got held. I don't even think he thinks he got held. And also the flag came out late. So look, it's not the only reason they lost. There's obviously a lot of missed opportunities, and we always talk about how you can't put yourself in a position where there is a bad call that could impact the game. There's accountability to be taken there. But man, like, it's just really frustrating that it came down to that. Like, I feel like obviously you didn't want the Eagles to win, so you're like, whatever, you're not going to be upset about it. But even like I feel like this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of the sentiment I saw from like unbiased fans, people who didn't really have a dog in the fight, so to speak, were like, man, this is a pretty lame way for the Super Bowl, which is such a great game up to that point, to end on this call, as opposed to here's how I want to actually set this up. So someone I follow on Twitter, good friend Arkansas Fred, I thought phrased it well. He said, like, instead of getting to see this legacy defining drive from Jalen Hurts, we just got wait, I'm gonna butcher it. I have the exact wording here. I'm just pulling it up. Elon's Twitter is a joke and terrible to use. I'm trying to figure it out here. I'm scrolling through my timeline, and here it is. He said that, okay, I still don't have it.
You can do
I'm trying to get it up. It's so pathetic. It's just like I'm trying to look for this one tweet, and I'm scrolling through, and this is a disaster. Why don't you say something to Vamp?
While you look for the tweet, I know that like your position is like people were robbed of like this incredible potential drive from Jalen Hurts. I will say, like, I'm not here to like debate the legality of the penalty, right? Like I'm not, whatever. It was holding. I can understand how somebody can see that as a hold. I can understand your point. My take that you mentioned and Stats' take, because he and I were talking about this, was it's stupid to say you can't call it in that moment of the game. Like, a penalty is a penalty. Like, that's my only point. Like, and again, like, that's independent of this specific penalty, but like a hold is a hold, a false start is a false start. You know what I mean? Like you should not, like, a penalty should not be a penalty in certain moments. That's my only take on this situation. I understand it was anticlimactic. And so to the point you brought up, like, oh, people were robbed of a potential Hurts drive. I also like even the Butker field goal was not thrilling. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, how this is what I'm going to equate it. Do you have the tweet before I do that?
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far from the tweet.
Instead of a potentially legacy defining drive, we got a bunch of scolding hall monitor types telling us why it was the correct call. Like, I mean, that's just the reality. It's like, okay, but this is cool.
Like, I don't want to debate this thing, but if it is the right call, then I'm happy the right call is made. That's all I'm saying. But what it felt like to me is, have you ever seen Breaking Bad? I mean, I imagine the answer is yes. So, like, I watched most of Breaking Bad on Netflix. Like, I think I only watched the last season on TV. But so Breaking Bad, like a lot of shows, when you're watching it on Netflix specifically, and it's like episode 12 of like a season that has like 24 episodes. If Walt was in danger, I was never like, oh my gosh, like, what's gonna happen here? Because I knew, like, I still got like 20 episodes left. You know what I mean? Like, Walt's gonna be fine. Like, this is gonna get worked out. It's kind of like back to Survivor, when you're fast forwarding through commercials or something, and you're like, well, there's only like 12 minutes left. You know what I mean? Like in the hour, like they're going to have to figure this out in this time. Like you can kind of context clues it a little bit and it kind of ruins reality. I don't know if that makes sense. That's how the Butker field goal felt. Like the coolness of the moment, even if you think the Chiefs winning was cool, which I obviously did, the coolness of the moment was impacted. It was deflated a little bit because even if it's the right call, because it's a penalty. Like, again, even if the penalty had been egregious, even if you agree with it, like the fact that such a pivotal moment happened that way, it's just like, whatever. I mean, if it were a movie, I would want it to be different, but it wasn't a movie. It was real life. And so it is what it is. I do want to say at the beginning here, because we're only about 10 minutes in, I mentioned this on the NFL show, and I wanted to say it here. I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to get enough credit for how he handled himself after the loss. And I don't think that any Eagles player is really getting a lot of credit. I think, no offense to Eagles fans, but I think Eagles fans being upset about the call is overshadowing Eagles players being like, look, dude, that's the call. Like, we're not going to complain about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they deserve a lot of credit for that. And I also think that
especially in contrast to the 49ers still whining, like literally up to the Super Bowl.
You had a lot of thoughts on that, and
Debo literally called James Bradbury trash. Like, come on, man! Like, really? Like, that's just disrespectful at a human level.
I'm not here to defend the Niners in any way for how they handled themselves, but you used the words human level. On a human level, I do understand them feeling like it was not, the best way for them to go out. Like, that's a hard pill to swallow. I get that, but obviously there's a lot there. But the thing I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to get enough credit for is the non-timeout call. I don't know, and this is difficult for me to say, I don't know that there's a coach who understands the value of timeouts in the NFL more than Nick Sirianni. Obviously, this is leading to it was 3rd and 9, right? And he takes the false start, or sorry, takes the delay of game as opposed to burning a timeout. It becomes 3rd and 14, and the Goddard play happens that Andy Reid challenged. I thought it was the right decision to challenge. I didn't think he was going to win, but I think you have to challenge that, right? Like in that moment, with everything on the line. But that's an elite move to not call that timeout, to understand that timeout, that's a move that Andy Reid doesn't understand, even himself, now a 2-time Super Bowl winner.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny, though, because you could also say, okay, it's not good that you're not getting the play calls in quick enough there. Something was wrong in the process, because that was happening a bit at that point in the game. Like, it was like they had the delay of game. So don't love that part of it. But overall, I don't know. I struggled to kind of categorize this game for Sirianni, because I thought he did a lot of good things. Obviously, you look at the success of the offense, he deserves credit for that. Shane Steichen's the play caller, but Sirianni is the one, he's part of the process still. He's putting the plays into the play sheet that are getting called. So I definitely think he deserves credit for that. And the team was not unprepared at all. I mean, they deleted halftime like they did. I don't think there's a lot to say he was disastrous, but at the same time.
Did you see this AJ Brown tweet or quote going around at this point? I don't know if you've seen it today.
Yes. Well, okay. This is going to touch on what I'm about to touch on. I mean, I think he needed to be more aggressive. And I don't think AJ Brown was ripping Nick Sirianni there, to be clear. I think he was just being honest in terms of, well, that's the thing. When you kick a field goal to go up 6 on Patrick Mahomes, who, like, you weren't stopping, then what does that mean? Like, there's no point. They're not making a 2-possession game. You still need the Chiefs are still probably going to get a touchdown, and you're going to be down. So, like, I definitely think I said, and this is not hindsight analysis, I said prior to the game on BGN radio that Patrick Mahomes is Michael Myers from Halloween. Like, you can, like, shoot him with a shotgun, you can light him on fire. It doesn't matter. Dude's going to keep coming back. You have to do, like, literally everything you possibly can. You have to, like, wrap him up in a coffin and then sink that coffin to the bottom of the ocean and then put him in a meat grinder. Like, you have to do, like, every possible thing. And I don't think Sirianni did that. And it's easy for me to say from, my chair here as a podcaster. But again, I said it from the outset that he needed to go for these on these 4th downs. And he did just at some points in the game. I don't want to say he never did, but to not go for it at the 4th and 2, I think it was at their own 32.
Right. Down by 1 at that point.
Like,
right.
Yeah. And I know, like, maybe game's over if you get that, but guess what? Like, why would you think that Jonathan Gannon was going to get a stop? And also from a standpoint of who do you trust more? Jalen Hurts, who was like the best player on the field in the entire game, and we'll get to him, I'm sure, or Aaron Siposs, your punter, who's coming off an injury and hasn't been good anyway. Like, you put the ball on your punter's foot and it didn't work out for you. So I definitely think Sirianni could have been better. It was not like an F game for him if we're talking about a grade, but it was not an A game, or maybe A minus, but it was not an A plus game, and you need an A plus game to beat Mahomes.
I agree with that. I agree with you. Like the process that led to the great, non-timeout call was broken, right? So like, it's like, oh, cool, you dug yourself out of the hole, but like you still dug the hole, right? And I actually have never understood that phrase. Like you dug yourself out. Like you don't dig to get out of a hole. You know what I'm saying?
How
Like
do you get
the
out of the hole?
digging's already, yeah. Like, you
well, yeah, jump. You do. Just keep digging it deeper until you get to the other side of the earth, and then climb out.
That's a weird phrase. But
I had another thing on the Bradbury penalty. I wasn't done with that. I mean, yes, you can say it's a penalty, but like, yeah, I mean, again, you have to look at it live versus if you Zapruder it. Yes, it does look like a penalty, and also, okay. Also, going 62 in a 60-mile-an-hour speed zone is speeding. But like, really, if you're going to get pulled over for a ticket like that, are you really going to be like, well, the police officer is right. I was definitely speeding. Like,
but like,
especially with the context of there's areas in life where you can probably get away with that a little bit more than other areas, where like this is a strict 25. I know areas like that, but some areas when it says 25, it really means like 35 or 40. So like, and in this game, the context was that like they're not calling everything tight. They're kind of letting the players play. So that's just another frustrating aspect of it.
I get your point, and I've brought this up many times at BTB, so people have heard this, and I don't know if I've ever brought it up to you. If I've ever told you about the purple pants rule.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, the purple pants rule. Very quickly is if you have a job and the job's like, we're going to pay you all this money to do this job. It's a super awesome job. Here's your contract. But then in the contract, it says you can't wear purple pants to work on Wednesdays. And you signed the contract, like that might be a dumb rule. But like if you sign the contract, like that's the rule. And so if like you wear purple pants to work on Wednesdays and then you get in trouble and you're like, can you believe this? My job is like penalizing me for wearing purple pants to work on Wednesdays. This is so stupid. Somebody be like, yeah, that's dumb, but like, is it a rule? And you'd be like, well, yeah, it's a rule, but like, well, it's a rule. Like, it was a rule. Like, and so I don't want to get hung up on that. Like, I don't think that's fair to Bradbury or to the Eagles or even the Chiefs to get hung up on it. But I understand the significance of the moment. I do want to get back to the 4th and 2 Michael Myers thing. So I know everybody brought up the Doug Peterson, very similar situation, went for it against the Patriots. And like, that's kind of the difference in this game. And I actually wanted to bring up a tweet of yours after I don't know if it was 4th and 3 that the Chiefs chose to kick the Butker field goal on. Now I recognize I would honestly say that was even worse. Early in the game, the Butker missed the doink. That was an even worse decision because what was that? Like they were at the Philly, like whatever it was, like 30-yard line. Like, so you're further downfield. I know Sirianni's punt was like on his side of the field. So like in that moment, I think the whole world is screaming, you got to go for this. You have Mahomes, blah, blah, blah. You missed the field goal. It's the football gods laughing in your face, blah, blah, blah. But you tweeted right then, you said Nick Sirianni goes for that. And I was really annoyed. But in that moment, I thought he's right. Like Nick Sirianni would have gone for that.
In that situation, yes.
And so like, they're not the same situations, but like at that point, everything you said is true and valid. The context of the moment that Hurts is playing out of his mind, blah, 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 whatever. You have to go for that. And like, that's the really, that was the Rogue One sort of storyline of Sirianni's game. I thought like that was the biggest mistake he made. And it felt like, I know the Tony play or the Tony return was so quick, but it just felt like it went from, and the Brown quote I'm talking about was when they were up 27-21. He said, I thought we could still lose. And it was so fast that it went from like a 6-point lead to an 8-point deficit. Like it was like 10 minutes of real time. And it was literally like a blink. And you have to know that. You have to play that way. And I give Sirianni is really annoying, but I give him a lot of credit for playing that way all season long. And he got to that one moment and he stuttered. And obviously it was fatal.
Yeah, and I was never feeling comfortable with a 10-point lead. I mean, I think I go back to, and I said this prior to the game on the podcast about why you need to treat Mahomes like he's the Michael Myers bad guy, is because you go back to when he was coming back from these huge deficits against the Texans and the Titans back in the playoffs. What was that? I don't know, like 3 years, whatever it was ago now.
And the Niners. They overcame a 10-point lead in that game.
Yeah, like it just doesn't matter. Like the 10-point lead especially meant nothing because the Chiefs got the ball first at to begin the second half. So like it wasn't like, but I will say, we can talk about the Bradbury call, debate that or whatever. One thing another bad call that I think is kind of getting overshadowed is the Devontae Smith catch that was ruled a catch and then overturned. I really disagree that you can say that was 100% not a catch, and that is the standard. It's not that hey, we think it's probably incomplete. We're like 99% short. No, you have to say with beyond the shadow of a doubt, it is clear and obvious. And I don't think that was clear and obvious. I think there's a level of debate. And to be clear, if it was incomplete, it was ruled incomplete, I would say the same thing. There's just no, it's not conclusive. It is inconclusive.
One of those like, oh, it's going to be what they called it on the field. It's not like there's not enough to overturn it one way or the other.
And that was a big deal because they would have had the ball at the 13-yard line with like just under a minute left, and there's a decent chance they get 7 there instead of 3. So I think that's kind of gets lost in the shuffle here.
I'm with you, and I'm not trying to just be negative because again, I came here not quite extending the proverbial olive branch, but wanting to talk about this in a fair way. But like Devontae had a catch that was not a catch in the NFC Championship game. And I know they blew out the Niners, so like it really was inconsequential. But like this, like I know it's a big moment and it's a big game, and like but like those, I don't want to like I'm not going to sit here and be like the Eagles got all the calls all season long. I'm like that's not true. Like every team gets calls, every team has calls work against them, blah blah blah. But
the 49ers could have challenged it, like we said they should have. I mean,
I recognize that, but
that's on them. That's not like the Eagles getting the point lucky. It's the 49ers being dumb.
Right. Back to the point of this game. Well, I mean, it's also the officials messing up. I mean, like that's part of what it is too. Like and that's why Roger Goodell's like, there's never been better officiating stuff. Line was so stupid or whatever. But like I don't think this was a catch, but the Miles Sanders fumble, like that's obviously what Chiefs fans counter what you're saying with, right? Like, oh, that could have been like a scoop and score too. I will say, and I said this on the show on Monday, I do, and I think you agree, I respect the officials letting that play out. That should be the rule always, right? Like if you're questionable about something, let it play out, because if that had truly been a fumble, then obviously we want the right result, to be what happens. So I agree it wasn't a catch, but I do also agree that it's kind of close. I mean, like it's kind of debatable. If it had been ruled a fumble, I don't know that I could have seen them, or they did rule it a fumble, obviously. But like if more people thought, if Greg, I wonder, like I talked about this with Jeremy on the show, like I wonder how much Greg Olson's comments sway people aside from fandom. Like I do think some impartial people were swayed by Olson coming down so hard on the Bradbury penalty as one example. And that's just kind of the way like humans work. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on all of that together.
I was never really worried about that, like standing, because it seemed like, again, if you Zapruder things, it's different than watching it in the moment live. And it looked like a bang bang play. That play happens like many times in the season where it's clearly incomplete. They're not going to give that. They're not going to say established possession. So I don't know. I was never really worried about that being ruled
the Sanders fumble. Right.
Yeah, ruled a fumble. Although Sanders, terrible game. Really bad game for him from the jump.
Bad way to go out, right? I mean, probably not returning, so just a bad final moment in an Eagles uniform.
Other than the only way I think he's back is if like, he's out there in the market for a long time and his price just comes like way down and you bring him back at a rate that you thought would not be possible. And that's not like out of the question, because there are a lot of free agent running backs, I believe, who are going to be on the market. It's a competitive market. And he might take $1 million less, just for example, than he would for some other team that he
like moving sucks,
the Texans or whoever. Yeah. So, I don't think it's impossible that he'd be back, but certainly you're not like making him a priority to resign before free agency begins.
On the subject of that, as we kind of like move to the aftermath of this all, I mentioned Bo Wolf's column in The Athletic. He said, and I think this is fair, that it is very unlikely that the 2023 Eagles are as good. You can define that like how you want to, as the 2022.
It is incredibly unlikely.
Well, I know.
I know, and like impossible.
I mean, we're going to talk about regression to the mean a lot. And I said that 1,000 times last year about the Cowboys defense, and look at what they did from a turnover standpoint, right? Like they were like the one. So like, it's not impossible, but it is incredibly unlikely. The sacks will likely regress. I would argue that to some degree, doesn't mean they'll suck. AJ Brown will regress a little bit. Devontae Smith, even Hurts to some degree, the rushing success. I think it's really dumb if the NFL like constitutes this rule to like fight against the like scrum play. Like that's dumb. Like it's within the rules. Like why are we?
What's the impetus for it? That it was successful.
Was wildly successful. Yeah. I mean, but last thing on the game. I don't know, like I don't like have a plan to write an article about this, but like I would like to see some sort of study on the art of like screaming about a penalty, because the false start right before the Eagles were going to run the scrum play that they were called for. Who was called for that false start?
Isaac Seumalo, the Eagles right guard.
Like that was maybe the most critical swing in because you go from like what was probably a first down to the Hurts fumble that is obviously the touchdown. Like And I don't know that the false start gets called if the Chiefs aren't like screaming their heads off about it. You know, like and even the Bradbury penalty, you sense Juju was quiet, but Mahomes right away is calling for the flag. Like there is like
the
a
flag
human
was late
element,
and it came out and he saw it after his pass was incomplete. I don't think he was.
Well, you know that like there are times where like players or whatever like beg for a call and they get one.
I don't think he was begging for the call. I think he saw the flag and he was pointing at the flag.
Okay, so Mahomes aside, but the false start I partly believe was at least partly generated by the Chiefs raising awareness to it. You get what I'm saying? Like, and so there is like I don't want to say an art to that, but that is like a small factor in football, in sports in general, right? Like flopping or whatever. But that was, I think I said it on Monday with Jeremy. That was one of the most impactful false start penalties in NFL history. Like that swung the game basically.
The Hurts fumble. Yeah, no, it's definitely, yeah, it was huge. The Hurts fumble is that's a tough pill to swallow because there's, again, I said this to Jimmy Kempski on BG Radio. There's nothing like interesting to say about that from like, there's no bigger point there. It's just an incredibly unlucky thing that happened.
Unlucky
like,
and uncharacteristic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not like, well, there's this bigger concern that Hurts is going to just drop the ball when he's like, no, that hasn't happened like once this year. It's not like Carson Wentz, who was fumbling a lot because he had terrible pocket awareness. Like it's nothing. It's indicative of nothing larger other than this one it's not like, hey, the Chiefs made a great play. No, he just dropped the ball. Like I don't know how to reconcile that. And sure enough, too, it bounced in a way that was not favorable to the Eagles, but right to set up a Chiefs touchdown. So like, I don't know. There's nothing interesting to say. And it really, like, he had an awesome game otherwise, but it's at the same time, it's hard to just like ignore that part because you can't just give the Chiefs 7 points. You can't give Mahomes the 7 points. That's a huge deal. But at the same time, outside of that one weird fluky mistake, he was like, Pete Sweeney said it. A Chiefs reporter himself said that not Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts was the best player on the field in that game.
I think if not for the two touchdowns are a big deal, but like if not for the two cute little Tony Sky Moore plays that are the touchdowns for the Chiefs, like that padded Mahomes' resume enough to win him the MVP, right? Like, because my point is like if those had been like Isaiah Pacheco touchdowns or whatever, or, something like similar like that, Jerick McKinnon like runs one in, whatever. I think there's a far more compelling case to make Hurts the MVP, even though the Eagles lose this game, which would have been, I don't want to say ironic, but coincidental that it would have happened the weekend that Chuck Howley was announced as a Hall of Famer. He's the only MVP of a Super Bowl loss in NFL history. So it would have been just kind of interesting that lined up that way. It definitely did. I mean, the fumble is the only demerit on his thing. And you're right. Like, I'm sure you remember the Dak fumble that he had in Philly in 2018. It was kind of similar, right? Like he was just like running and it just like fell out of his hands. It wasn't like, and that's, I get that it's probably difficult to reconcile because it's not like he got sacked and it was like a punch out. It was just like a perfect bang, bang play. It's just like drop the ball. Like it's just a weird, kind of like fluky thing that never happens ever. It's tough. I mean, and it's tough to say that like, there's a lot of reason for hope and optimism for the Eagles, but like Jalen Hurts had maybe like his finest hour and they didn't win the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a hard thing to get. And I don't say that to be mean or anything. It's just, I get that.
No, that's the whole tone of the game. And like, I think they've scored the most points ever in a Super Bowl loss. Like this was the game that in so many other Super Bowls is a winning game. Like it's just not in this game. So that's the tough part to reconcile. It's not like they came out and they sucked and it's like you can be mad or no, there's like it's been, again, part of the reason it's been tough to talk about after the loss because there's not a lot to like take on, like have takes on, like, oh, this player missed this, and like there's the things you can nitpick, sure, but you can do that in literally any game ever. Even the Chiefs, I'm sure, have things they're gonna not like, no, they're gonna celebrate, sure, but you can, if you really want to, you can go through things that happened with them in this game and you can nitpick and say, oh, we could have won by more of this, blah blah blah. So like, I don't know, it's just not. It sounds simple. Only one team can win the game. That's the reality of the game.
This was really that. Like, this was like a 51-49 split, and Kansas City was just on the 51 side of things. You mentioned it. Most points ever scored in a losing effort in a Super Bowl. Obviously, it's been well said. Second team ever to blow a double-digit lead at halftime, obviously joining the 2016 Falcons. That one's obviously more embarrassing for obvious reasons. We'll talk free agency stuff, obviously, in the coming weeks. And I know you have a list up at BGN, all the pending free agents on the Eagles, and there are a lot of important ones. I would guess Jason Kelce is at the top of your personal list.
I mean, yeah, we to see, if he wants to play again or
Right, like,
not.
that's also a unique thing, but, like, as far as, like, most important players, he's gotta be at the top of that list, I would imagine, like, who's topping him if not him?
Again, I'm not even I'm not
Okay,
even
okay.
there. I'm not even
Okay,
ready
well,
to, because it's just
this
like there's plenty of off season. We'll get to it, but it's just like we don't need to. I mean, not we. Again, I'm not gonna begrudge anyone who wants to do that and look ahead, but like I'm just mentally not there. Someone who writes about the team literally every day,
Right.
all the, for the past
Sure,
a
okay.
billion days. I'm just like I'm not ready.
So to sort of keep things positive, although I'm not necessarily interested in that, but I mean, let's also be fair and objective. I wanted to look because it's so often said, like, oh, it's really difficult to get back to the playoffs if you lose a Super Bowl. And I was kind of curious because I didn't totally remember. And I meant to only list 10, but I listed 11 on accident when I was compiling the notes, which will serve my 2-in-6 argument very well, I imagine, with the audience. But so these are the last 11 teams in reverse chronological order. So like most recent to further in history. And what they did, the Bengals a year ago, obviously lost the Super Bowl, and they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, and they lost to the team that won the Super Bowl, obviously in the Kansas City Chiefs. So, good precedent there. The year before, the Chiefs lost to the Bucks, and they obviously made it back to the playoffs. They lost in the conference championship game. So you're talking about the last two teams who lost the Super Bowl. Both made it back to the AFC, or in their case, the AFC Championship game. The 49ers lost to the Chiefs the first time around, and they missed the playoffs the following year, but they had the most games lost due to injury in 2020. Dallas was second on that list that year, but San Francisco obviously was just so beat up, and so they missed the playoffs entirely. The Rams, after losing the Super Bowl in the 2018 season, missed the playoffs in 2019. So very few teams on this list, as you know, Brandon, have missed the playoffs after losing the Super Bowl. Sean McVay, one of them. Sean McVay also had the worst title defense of all time. But tell me more about how Sean McVay is the next Bill Belichick. The 2018 Patriots, who of course lost to the Eagles, they came back and won the Super Bowl the very next year against the Rams, we just talked about. The 2017 Falcons, I consider that to be the most impressive one on this list, just given the way they lost the Super Bowl. They did make the playoffs. They won a playoff game against Sean McVay, again, the next Bill Belichick, and did lose to the Eagles, obviously, in the divisional round of the playoffs. The 2016 Panthers, who this team kind of felt like to me, this Eagles team, from like a just pure domination standpoint all season long. I'm not saying they will have the same fate, but they did miss the playoffs the following year. But again, tell me more about how great Ron Rivera is. In 2015, the Seahawks, after the Malcolm Butler pick, they made the playoffs and they lost to the aforementioned Panthers in the divisional round of the playoffs. Last three here, the Broncos, after getting embarrassed by the Seahawks, they did make it back to the playoffs, and they lost to the Colts in the divisional round right before the Deflategate saga was born. In 2013, the Niners, who had lost to the Ravens the year before, they made the playoffs and lost in the NFC Championship game. That was the Richard Sherman, Michael Crabtree, corner game, whatever. And then the last one on this list, the 2012 Patriots, who lost the Super Bowl to Eli Manning in 2011. That season, they did make the playoffs in 2012 and lost in the AFC Championship game to the Ravens in Joe Flacco's run. So of these 11, last 11, only 3 missed the playoffs the following year. And the Niners one, you can kind of chalk up to the injuries. And the other two, you can chalk up to some poor coaching in Sean McVay and Ron Rivera.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like, oh no, the Eagles can't even make the playoffs next year, especially in an NFC that is not like shaping up.
Well, but that narrative exists, and that's why I'm saying like that narrative is kind of false.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not like worried about that so much. It's more of just actually being able to win the title. A lot goes into that, and the Eagles were so healthy this year. And look, I think there's reasons to be optimistic and pessimistic, and maybe I'll do that for a column for BGN. Reasons to feel good about the team moving forward, reasons to feel bad. If you're looking for reasons to feel good, Jalen Hurts being as awesome as he was, and honestly, look, he's 24. It's possible he still gets better. Might he regress in some ways? Sure. But like, is it also he could get better? Yeah, I think it is. I think with Jalen Hurts, specifically because he's gotten better basically every year in the past, whatever many years now. I definitely think that is a big point of optimism. And yes, the Eagles are going to have to pay him a big contract extension, but still, you have some kind of window with him here. I do believe in that much. I believe that Nick Sirianni has shown enough to, at the very least, so he's not like a liability. And he does give this team an edge in terms of culture, in terms of analytics and being aggressive. So you have that going for you. I still think even though the Eagles are losing some coaching staff members, there are still talented assistants here. So they have enough here. And, they're going to retain some of these free agents. They're not going to lose like literally every single one.
Right.
And they
they have the 10th pick in the draft.
The 10th pick. They have some replacement plans in place in terms of like Cam Jurgens being on the roster and Nakobe Dean being on the roster. So they're definitely not hopeless by any means. Now, that being said, again, they were so healthy. You're not going to get that health luck. You're probably just not, like, it's not going to happen just because you were incredibly healthy this year.
And so to your, I don't want to say pessimistic point, but to your pessimistic point, not that they wouldn't have beaten better teams, but like you're probably not going to have the quarterback situation happen in the NFC Championship game. You're probably not going to draw, a Giants team that was overperforming on the season in the division round. Now they earned those benefits. We talked about that a lot, but like, the division's harder. You
might not get the 1 seed again, to your point.
Right. I mean, so a lot of those things are fair and true. Like that regression will come in certain ways, and it will go the opposite direction, in things that were negative this season, obviously. And that's like the thing, like even regression can happen like week to week. You can have literally the third best, sack group of all time and then not get a single one of the Super Bowl. Like, you know what I mean? Like it can be that fluky sometimes. That's the biggest disappointment, I would imagine.
It is, but like I have a hard time totally being I just can't buy that it's like 100% the pass rush just didn't show up. Like that is so impossible for me to believe that like that is 100% the case. Because like what does that even mean? They just got bad all of a sudden, or they weren't trying? Like I think you have to say more than 0% that a field with slippery conditions, which is just a joke that even it exists at all. Like it's just pathetic. There's no good reason for that to be a variable in this game, especially to the degree that it was. But I think it did specifically not prevent the Eagles from winning. But I don't want to hear that like, oh, both teams had to deal with it. Yeah, they did. But like, let's say, RJ, that which hand do you use? Are you a lefty or a righty?
I'm right-handed.
All right. Do you know a lefty?
I mean, yes, in my life I've known somebody who's left-handed. Yes.
Who is it?
My mother-in-law is left-handed.
Okay, so let's say you and your mother-in-law have to perform a task. You have to take a test, like a written test. You have to write like an essay. Okay, both of you have to tie your right hand behind your back. That's not proportionally like just it doesn't affect you evenly. Like there's definitely a team that is impacted more. And I think specifically when it came to the edge rusher matchup, the Chiefs' offensive line is definitely good, and they should get a lot of credit for playing well. Patrick Mahomes deserves credit for getting the ball out fast. Certainly, these were factors. Andy Reid deserves credit for scheming. Eric Bieniemy, all of that. Yes, all that is true. At the same time, the biggest advantage the Eagles had over that Chiefs offensive line was on the edge against Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley. And you saw in the game where there'd be rushes where Josh Sweat and Reddick would be rushing them wide, and they would just fall down. Like that's tough. That's tough to see.
I don't have a passionate take on the other than like it's stupid that this would exist.
Well, did you see this text from Stats?
That's what I was about to read
about this. Okay, yeah.
So a tweet from Ollie Connolly, as if Stats knows that we're talking about this and need this. He texted us this. Ollie tweeted that he charted slip/Sodgate. Those are Ollie's words, not mine. The Eagles defense had a player slip on 38% of Patrick Mahomes' dropbacks. 5 times they had multiple slippages. The Chiefs defense had a player slip on only 14% of Jalen Hurts' dropbacks with no multiples. Ollie did the work here, so I'm not trying to be like, hey, give us some more work. I think he has a Substack too that people should check out, the Read Optional. I would like to know what the dropbacks were. You know what I mean? Like, what were was one the Kelsey touchdown? You know what I mean? Like, I would like to understand what specific, like, were they inconsequential? Were they all incompletions? I'm not saying this makes it any better or worse or whatever, but I'm just curious. I do think at the very least, kind of like the Bradbury thing, I don't mean to lump all of this into this word, but it does ruin the aesthetic of the Super Bowl, right? Like, it's the freaking Super Bowl, dude. Like, it should be cool. Everything should be perfect and immaculate. Like, you should not have a crappy field that they took all sorts of victory laps on. I'm sure you saw in the lead up to the game. But okay, we have a lot more to get to, but we should take a break. So let's do that and hear a word from our sponsors. Brandon, during the break, I told you the movie that I watched over the weekend. What was it?
I don't know. She didn't actually do that.
I mentioned it on the NFL show on Monday, so I thought you would remember. I watched Top Gun Maverick. I hadn't seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I watched it. It ruled. Like, it was so cool. Like, I absolutely loved it. And I partly loved it because I remembered Miles Teller, like, continually coping during the World Series about how like what was the line he had like in the like hallway? He was like, "Remember, this is going to be the moment that the Phillies came back and won it." So it makes it easier for me to enjoy. But that's my only snide remark this particular episode. I feel like we've done all the like Super Bowl post-mortem that we can. We do have other Eagles things to get to if you're ready to do that.
Well, I will say, controversially, low key, the person I believe in charge of the field is a Chiefs fan, or is from Kansas City at least. So, a little suspicious.
Okay, so you and I started recording this actually it is Tuesday, Valentine's Day. It's now 12 p.m. Central Standard Time on the dot. We started recording right when Shane Steichen's introductory press conference happened as the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Before we get to that, it did feel to me, I don't know, but like both coordinators were going to return, and then Sunday morning happened. It felt like Sunday morning before the game was the like wave of like, well, both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon are going to leave after all, blah blah blah. Like, and it makes sense, obviously, like given that the Cardinals and Colts, to be clear, at the time of this recording, there's still no news on the Cardinals job, but it does make sense. But it was just kind of like out of nowhere, like these big bombs, like they're about to take these jobs. So I'm sure that made the day more interesting as well.
There's some writing on the wall in terms of, I think we'd seen like the Cardinals are pausing their search. That was kind of midweek last week. And, the fact that the Colts search was going on for so long, there was some, thought that, okay, maybe they're just waiting for a Super Bowl assistant. And certainly that was the case. I believe actually I want to give credit to Mike Silver. He on Saturday night said that like there's buzz that Steichen and Gannon are very much in play for these Colts and Cardinals jobs, even though we hadn't seen a ton of that. So there was an inkling there, but certainly it became more definitive on Sunday about Steichen to the Colts. And interested to see how that goes. Steichen, had a big role in the Eagles' offensive success. He took over play calling for Nick Sirianni during the turnaround.
That was in 2021. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's our understanding. I wanted to make sure the Cowboys fans listening and reading believe it to. Again, I don't want to like, just be so like obtuse, but like the offense was not thriving. Steichen took over. By the way, Shane Steichen called plays for Justin Herbert his rookie year with the Chargers. But so Steichen takes over. I don't know if it was mid 2021, but then the run game gets going, and obviously was the play caller in 2022.
Yeah, and again, I want to make the distinction that it's not like Sirianni is part of he's putting plays into the play sheet that are getting called. Like he is very much involved in the process. It's not like a hands-off process. But yeah, I mean that's going to be a big thing for the Eagles to replace here. It seems like Brian Johnson, who is the Eagles quarterbacks coach and has a relationship with Jalen Hurts and has been an offensive coordinator at the college level at Utah for 2 years, Houston for 1 year, and then Florida most recently for 1 year, will be the replacement. He's getting a lot of interviews for other jobs. I know the Ravens hired Todd Monken, but Brian Johnson was said to be in the mix there, and possibly the timing of Monken getting hired today on Tuesday might have to do with the fact that Johnson will not be leaving because he's going to stay in Philly because Steichen is in Indy. So that's I think the big name to watch there. And then we'll see with Gannon. I think Steichen's obviously the bigger loss just because of the Eagles' offensive success. I don't think it's like that they're doomed without him because I still think they have a lot of good things going for them. And I think Johnson, from what I've gathered, I have not seen him call plays extensively, but from what I've gathered in press conference settings, he seems like a real inspiring guy. Jalen Hurts loves him a lot, so they're on the same page. So that's the offense. And then Gannon, we'll see. Yeah, but would not be heartbroken to see Jonathan Gannon go.
I haven't been a Jonathan Gannon fan. I have said before that I thought he was over criminalized. He is clearly, I think the term scapegoat implies that like he did nothing wrong. He obviously did not have a great game in the Super Bowl.
0 sacks, 0 takeaways, and Mahomes completed over 80% of his passes. Like it's not that you're going to shut him down, but you need to have one thing to hang your hat on, and he didn't. The only stop he got right was the missed field goal where the Andy Reid should have went for it. And did they punt?
They kicked the field goal and he missed it. Harrison Butker.
So no forced punts, right? No, there were a couple punts. Yeah, there were.
Okay, but like to the point you made, whatever it was, 40 minutes ago. I mean, they're what BLG deems to be unfair penalty. I'm not saying you say it was unfair, but you get my point. They're that away from him getting a critical third down stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, and again, I'm not sitting here and be like, let's give Jonathan Gannon a bunch of credit, but like, if you're an Eagles fan, you can't out of one side of your mouth be like the penalty was crap, blah blah blah, but Jonathan Gannon did nothing. I mean, so
even if that was the case, I mean, it's still the same result in terms of they ultimately allowed a field goal. Yes, a field goal with more time on the clock, but in the second half, the Chiefs drives would have then been touchdown, 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 field goal.
Sure.
Like it's not great. I mean, it was a below average performance any way you slice it. I feel
agreed.
Like
Mahomes
can't have 0 sacks, can't have 0 takeaways.
And he had one incompletion in the second half, and it was the crazy merry-go-round thing, whatever. But I mean, it is Mahomes, right? Like, so this becomes this like we don't have to like Mahomes everything, right? Like, he doesn't have to be absolute trash because he got outworked by Patrick Mahomes, right? Like a lot that welcome to the world, you know what I mean? But I get the point. All I'm saying is like he was a very good defensive coordinator for most of the season. He had his flaws. Unfortunately, his biggest flaw was in the most important game.
Well, but that's something we said leading up to the game. That was one of the biggest concerns, and I wrote about it for a post that ultimately went up on Arrowhead Pride, like the 3 reasons why we think each of our teams will lose. And Gannon against quarterbacks who are any kind of level of good to great, above that, not good, not a good track record. And the Eagles didn't play a ton of those this year, but when they did, they certainly did not shut down Aaron Rodgers. Dak had that huge game. Like, it's just, you can't get it. Just seems from a philosophical perspective that Gannon's strategy to really kind of dumb it down is just like to wait and kind of hope that quarterback's going to make a mistake and rely on the pass rush. And it just feels like sometimes you got to have like a trick up your sleeve or something. You have to force the issue. I feel like that you can't just let the other quarterback methodically move down the drive, because I get like I know you don't want to allow big plays in theory, but sometimes a big play, especially like if let's say the Eagles allowed a big play at the end of the game on that final drive, the Chiefs score, then the Eagles have a chance to get the ball back. Like the thing with Jim Schwartz when he said to Doug Peterson at the end of Super Bowl 52, he literally, there's like a mic'd up clip of him saying like, I'm going to get you the ball back one of 2 ways. Either like they're going to go score or we're going to get a turnover. Like his point is, I'm going to be really aggressive here, and it's either going to burn us or it's going to work out. And sure enough, it worked out. And even though Jim Schwartz allowed 33 points in that game, this is what Gannon needed to do. He needed to have that one play to be able to hang your hat on to steal a possession, and he never did.
I mean, they tried to let the Chiefs score at the very end on the McKinnon play. But I mean, I'm certainly not going to sit here and defend Jonathan Gannon.
I think it was too late at that point. They really should have like let them score earlier. Like I think Pacheco had that big run to the left side, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came down, made a good tackle. And I know it's hard to be like say don't make the tackle, but I feel like you almost have to. I just think have to do that.
I think if anything, and I think people are only applying this to Jonathan Gannon. Like maybe the Eagles defense, and again, I'm not here today to be rude, but like was a tad overrated across the season, and some of it was a result of the quarterback play, like you talked about, like, and that's not their fault, right? Like they just played who was in front of them. But like you said, I mean, who was the best quarterback they played before this? Was it not Dak? I mean, like
the best 3 would say were Aaron Rodgers, Dak, and Jared Goff probably, and they all had like big performances,
right? And that's what I'm saying, like and that's not to say like, oh, they are losers and trash, but like,
no, they set the NFL record for sacks. Like, or you can't, almost did.
I'm actually asking the question: who was the like stellar quarterback that they limited? Kirk, maybe that's the one.
That's the best one you can point to, and obviously, I'm not really feeling super strongly about that. But really, just going back to even last year, though, like this, the whole sample size of Gannon, like what can he hang his hat on and be like, wow, he really had that game plan for X? And I get it. Like these quarterbacks are great. So I'm not asking him to be like 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. No one is asking for that. But like, can you not get eviscerated by them? Can you not allow them to complete over 80% of their passes? Like it's just too easy. That's the thing. I think there's a crux of it. It's like it's just too easy at a certain level. It's like the other quarterback doesn't even look like they're like sweating out there. It's just like, oh, this is really easy. I'm just going to pick them apart. It's laborious, yes, because of how much like you have to methodically move your way down. So it takes like effort in that sense. But in the standpoint of like, it's just the whole we're going to play off all this. I'll take advantage of that. And I think this is what I said to Jimmy on BGN Radio. I'll repeat myself here. It's tough because you see, a lot of great stuff from Gannon in terms of these defensive ratings and whatever you want to say and how they rank. At the end of the day, though, this elite quarterback thing is a big deal if you want to win a championship, because you're going to have to stop one at one point. And I just feel like it's hard to feel like you're ever going to get over that hump with him.
They almost didn't have to. I mean, they were, who knows to what degree away from their 3 playoff games coming against Daniel Jones, whoever you want to call the Niners
Chad
quarterback
Henne.
for the game, and Chad Henne. You know what I mean? So, and again, like that's the kind of like call it luck, call it whatever, that is probably not going to be as prevalent next season. And so you're probably going to, I mean, you are going to have to play more elite quarterbacks. So you play the AFC East. You get Mahomes first of all because of the 17th game. That's the Chiefs foil this year. You think so? Like you really believe that?
I mean, why? What else are they? When else are they going to put that?
I mean, that was my argument to Jeremy on Monday was like we've kind of seen everything else. Like I don't need to see another Mahomes Allen. Like just like it would be the most interesting thing would be Chiefs Eagles.
It's just I feel it's a no brainer. You're officially like tying a bow on the 2022 season at that point, and kicking it off into 2023.
Well, the Panthers did have to go through that. I mentioned that to Jeremy as well. They had to visit Denver and watch them raise the banner for that Super Bowl. But okay, so Mahomes is one. I would put Dak up there again, not in this order, but Mahomes, Dak, Josh Allen's another. Obviously, it depends. Obviously, what happens, this offseason, obviously, whether Aaron Rodgers is a Jet or not, whether what Miami does, maybe you believe Tua is in that mix. The Vikings, you'll get, you know what I mean? Like, again, I know you don't believe in Kirk Cousins, but that's another one. And whatever this is the NFC West, right? For the NFC East this year. So I know you don't want to like think too far into the future, but like Kyler, maybe. I know they beat the Cardinals this year, but by the way, did you see that the Chiefs this was really funny. Chiefs had more wins in Arizona this year than the Cardinals.
Yeah, that was also going to apply to the Eagles if the Eagles won.
Oh, that's right, because they won their game. Yeah. That was funny. That was really, really, really funny. So kudos to that person. Okay, we have a few other NFC East things to fly through. If we have no more thoughts on the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you like Rihanna, by the way? It's my last question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She killed it. Thought she did great.
Yeah. It was awesome. I said this too. I wrote about the show for SBNation.com. It was hard to enjoy because at that point, I was feeling like, oh man, it's not going the way I want. So
I want to change my answer from my favorite song to Umbrella, because that's the only one I could just think of off the top of my head, and I panic picked. And Only Girl in the World. I think that's the best one, actually.
That's a great Rihanna song. I was a little bit bummed we didn't get Disturbia. I was really hoping for that.
Holden said the same thing. He was sitting right next to me when we were watching my friend Holden, who is a big NFC East Mixtape listener. And he was like, "What? She's going to do it, right?" And at this point, it had been like whatever many. Like I knew it was winding down. I'm like, "I'm sorry, buddy. I don't think it's coming."
Yeah, I mean, that would have been great. Please Don't Stop the Music would have been cool, but I mean, I really
she already
really
got to so much too. Like I was really impressed with that she got to so much, but like it didn't feel like too much. It was the right balance of hit a lot of the great things, but also don't like make it so much that it doesn't flow at all.
It was literally the right, like you're saying, the right amount of each song to sing. Like she didn't stick on one song too long. It was just it was perfect. It was like a great DJ, just like going from one to another. Although she was obviously not the DJ. Okay, so continuing our theme, our offseason order obviously will be Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders. That is the order that they finished the NFC East in this past season. The Dallas Cowboys had no real big news except for the fact I told you this on Friday, right before we recorded the look ahead with Steven. By the way, Steven, we went 0 on all of our same game parlays this season, and Steven ruined it. You and I hit really early, actually, our legs. So way to go, Steven, for ruining that.
I feel really good about my leg. I said on the show, like, I think Jalen Hurts not only has a chance to hit the over on this, but I think he has a chance to break the record for Super Bowl rush, and he did.
Look, if we're talking about who should feel the best, I took Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown score. He had 3 freaking touchdowns. So like as far as the way that metric is evaluated, so like I mean, let's give me some props here. But anyway,
more likely than him breaking a
whatever.
Record
I told y'all that Thursday night we
had ever get an octopus. Sorry, by the way, too, right? The touchdown and the 2-point conversion, same player scoring it. Yep.
Right. So I told you that Thursday night we were all prepped at BTB, and you know how this goes. Anyone who wants to know how the sausage is made, we had some pre-rides and some graphics ready. DeMarcus Ware, Hall of Famer, boom, right on. Chuck Howley, like I said, only MVP to lose the Super Bowl. We got the stuff had it ready, boom, awesome. Cowboys have 2 Hall of Famers, and I was feeling a little bit sick. I still kind of sound that way. I know that. So I was super excited, Brandon. I was gonna close the laptop. I was going to head over to Hogwarts, start the new game. I had my whole Thursday night plan. Boom! Dak Prescott wins Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year. Goodbye, night. You know how that goes. And so, I mean, obviously a very cool thing. Whether you think Dak Prescott is good or bad, he is a tremendous human being. And so it was really cool to see that happen for him. And so kudos to Dak Prescott.
Should have been Brandon Graham. Or it should have. I mean, or he should have gotten comeback player of the year. I think it was a disservice to not have Brandon Graham recognized.
Okay, so you can't say that Dak Prescott's a wonderful human despite the fact that he won Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year.
I mean, I could bring up some things, but I'm not going to do that.
It was a great night for Dak Prescott. Great night for DeMarcus Ware, obviously, who was on Blog on the Boys last week. People can go back and listen to or watch that interview on Blog on the Boys channels. Awesome for Chuck Howley. Did you have a hard or strong take on the Hall of Fame class as a whole, obviously, outside of them?
No. Honestly, I don't really care about the Hall of Fame. Super passionately, I don't.
I mean, I know it's hard for you today. It was kind of cool to see Joe Thomas get in. Zach Thomas finally got in, former Cowboy, once upon a time. So other than that, it was kind of chalk.
Maybe I'll care more when I get older, but I just feel like, some of these players I didn't really, fully watch, or I don't know, I'm not watching Joe Thomas. I know he's great, but not watching Brown. I'm not watching him play. I don't know. Just don't feel a strong connection to it.
I went to I told Joe Thomas this. He was on Blog on the Boys a long time ago. I went to Brown's training camp in 2008. I was in the Cleveland area, and me and my dad went, and I met his grandparents. He was a second-year player at the time, Joe Thomas, and his grandparents are the coolest people. They his grandfather had his grandmother, had an orange mohawk. They were dressed in all sorts of wild, crazy, cool, fun gear, and had all sorts of stuff. So super cool to see them supporting him. So happy for Joe Thomas and his family. Like I said, friend of BTB. But yeah, I don't really have a passionate take. Happy for DeMarcus Ware. Happy for Chuck Howley. Happy for Dak Prescott. Did you watch any of NFL honors at all?
No, zero chance. Okay. I went to bed at wait, when was that? When
was Thursday night.
Okay.
Thursday night.
No, I did not. Yeah.
I guess on Cowboys note, just to make sure we get this in here. It was a busy week not covering the Super Bowl because we had a lot of interviews and stuff. Trayvon Diggs stopped by Blog on the Boys and kind of issued a decree and asked Cowboys fans to
this is so sad,
to clamor to get Stephon Diggs. I'm not making this up. He literally said, everybody tweet, get Stephon to Dallas.
Okay.
And Stephon Diggs, just to be clear,
the Bills will trade him.
Stephon Diggs was interviewed by USA Today the next day on Friday, and he was asked about this. And he was, I think said the right things, had enough fun with it, whatever. Neither of them were well, we could play together in Buffalo. that was never the argument or never a line. It was just oh yeah, we could play together in Dallas. It's a funny thing. I don't think it happens either, but this is a new offseason thing to watch out for. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, the Bills would take on $37.5 million in dead money and actually lose $17 million if they trade him. Yeah. So. And then even next year, they would take on a $25.7 million in dead money. So he's not really tradable until 2025, which is his age 32 season at that point.
Yeah, tough scene. But that was the biggest news outside of everything. The New York Giants, on the subject of NFL honors, Brian Daboll did win Coach of the Year. I don't think either of us have a problem with that. Makes sense. Obviously, he had a phenomenal season. I also wrote Kadarius Toney in the notes just because he had the big night. I think if he takes that punt return back, he's Super Bowl MVP, by the way.
Maybe. Probably not. I mean, they love to give it to the quarterback. Yeah, Brian Daboll got beat by Nick Sirianni and spanked 2 out of the 3 times. So that's kind of funny. First, I forget what it was. First, I think the Giants are the first team that the Eagles have ever beaten 3 times in one season. So there you go.
Well, that doesn't happen a lot, that opportunity. Right.
But, it's a thing. Daboll's great. I thought he maximized the talent. It's interesting because progress isn't always linear, as people like to say. And the expectations are higher now. The expectations have been raised because of what he did this year. And the pressure is on. We'll see if he can do it. I think this is a very critical offseason for the Giants. I think, as I've said before, they can kind of go one of 2 ways. I think most fans are just going to assume that it's definitely going up, but there's the potential to kind of get these decisions wrong, depending what happens with the Daniel Jones contract. I think they're going to sign him. But really, the Saquon thing, that's the big thing. Like how they
Right.
handle that situation is a really big decision. If you give him the Zeke contract or something dumb like that, not optimal, but we'll see.
I saw, I mean, this has been said many times, but I saw Daniel Jeremiah tweeted, I think on Monday, he was like, this running back class is loaded. You know, there's like there's starters on day 3, and it's like, hey, Cowboys, hey, everybody, listen, like, look at this tweet, like, stop doing the thing and do the smart thing, please. I was kind of surprised.
And so is the free agency class, like I said. Like, there's a lot of options.
Well, but to that point, like, why pay somebody in free agency?
Well, I'm saying, like, wait, you can just wait is my point.
Right.
You don't have to go out and, I'm saying, pay the big bucks, but I'm saying just don't pay anyone and wait, and then eventually someone will probably be available at a good price.
Great point. My last thing on the Giants, I had 2 things, and this is one. I was kind of surprised we didn't get like a line from either of them in Super Bowl week. You know what I mean? Like, you would have thought that one of them would have been on with somebody and said something about a deal or a contract or whatever. But I don't know, just didn't totally happen. The second thing, on the subject of a team beating another 3 times in a season, 2009 Cowboys beat the Eagles 3 times in one season, but you know, whatever. Okay, so that's the Giants side of things. Washington has a little bit of news going on. So first of all, Eric Bieniemy, obviously Chiefs offensive coordinator, is thought to be their potential new offensive coordinator. And it was reported on Tuesday that Greg Roman is going to interview for it as well. So they're a long ways away from Scott Turner.
It does feel like this is I mean, Bieniemy would seemingly be a pretty intriguing hire, especially relative to what it seems like they would be able to get. And I think there might be something there to the, old Andy Reid coaching tree that kind of gives Rivera an edge and inside like track to getting that where other teams might not be able to kind of convince him to leave or work for them as an offensive coordinator. So we'll keep an eye on that one. I think that would be a good hire for them. Greg Roman, everyone likes to hate on him, but I mean, he has produced some successful offenses. So, and they really, I'd imagine, be leading into the running game at that point. But it's weird because we don't know who Washington's quarterback will be unless they're just sticking with Sam Howell.
Well, Ron Rivera did say that last week. I know you were really busy, but he gave an interview and said, I don't know who it was with, so apologies, but that they're likely going to begin everything with Sam Howell as QB1. But I mean, take that for what you will at this point.
I mean, yeah, you have to say that at this point because he's your only quarterback under contract, right? I mean, they're going to cut Wentz at some point here, and Heineke, I guess, is a free agent. Other thing on Washington is that I know Josh Harris, who owns the Sixers, which is so stupid, was touring their facility, I believe, recently. Right. So that's another thing to watch there on the ownership front. Still sounds like Bezos is in play. We'll see. I want to get your take on this because for me, it was already weird when Josh Harris bought the Devils because, as you brought this up, know,
right? Like the whole tri-state area geographical thing, right?
Like, how would you feel if you were in that situation? Does it matter to you? It definitely seems weird, right? It's definitely weird. It's weird for like the owner of the Sixers to then also own the Devils, the Flyers rival, and then the Commanders, the Eagles rival. Like that's and especially because their buildings are all right there together in South Philly. It's just a strange thing.
It doesn't bother me. I mean, like if I look at it through my own personal lens, Jerry Jones owns the Cowboys, Jim Crane owns the Astros, and they actually work in partnership with one of they. This is, I think, interesting. Last week they released a joint statement. I'm paraphrasing, but it was like basically like advocating for gambling to become legal in Texas. So like you get those two dudes involved, you know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, like looks like and they obviously realize there's a lot of money to be made there. But anyway, and the Glazer family owns Manchester United, and so like, do you think it's weird that they own the Bucks and Manchester United? You know what I mean? No. I mean, like,
those are different, like, realms,
who is the like, who's the like ideal?
Countries.
I know, but like, who, like, I don't know, like, so I guess my point, like, I'm not like attached to Jerry Jones or Jim Crane as a Cowboys or Astros fan. You know what I'm saying? So like,
you wouldn't think it's weird if like Jerry Jones also bought like the Phillies and like owned the Phillies too?
No, why would that? Like, how would that inhibit?
That'd be weird. It would be a weird dynamic. I feel like it's just strange.
I mean, like, why?
The Phillies and like, who are your biggest rivals and the other teams you like?
I mean, I guess like
the Yankees, maybe for the Astros.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to call it a rivalry when they own them. But
who would it be? Is there anyone that would apply or no?
But like, nothing would apply for me because like I wouldn't get like I wouldn't be bothered. Like I'm not rooting for the owner. I mean, the Spurs are owned by the Holt family. I mean, so still, like, I mean,
I think it's weird. You don't have to think it's weird, but I think it's weird.
I mean, like,
it's not a good vibe. You can't tell me that's a good vibe. It's not a good vibe. It's a bad vibe.
Who's it a bad vibe for in this case?
The fans who are like, this is a weird
No,
thing.
But like who, like what fans? Like the Commanders fans, Eagles fans, Sixers fans? Like who's the most, I'm actually asking, like who's the most impacted?
I think Sixers fans, because you come in with this ownership and it's like, okay, they're committed to the team, but then they're like buying all these other teams and then it just kind of feels like cheapened, like, oh,
what if they are committed? What if they're equally committed to the Sixers and to the Commanders? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I think it's weird.
By the way, Sixers, if they
it's weird because then like the Sixers are tweeting out like, "Hey, go Eagles!" but like they don't mean that.
They share a city. Like, what do you mean? Like they don't mean that? Like the
owner of the team doesn't mean that though. Like the ownership,
way too much of like.
There are weird.
So like you don't think it's weird that Bryce Harper was a Cowboys fan and then like played for Washington and then like adopted the Eagles because he became a Philly? That's weirder to me than what you're
because proposing. It's just like a personal choice versus actual ownership and like apparent rooting interest. That is binding. It's weird when and not.
Do you think it's weird when former players become owners of teams they didn't play for?
No, not really. But like,
so like
who is that?
The Derek Jeter stuff. Like Derek Jeter was like a part owner or had the like role, like maybe not owners,
but like the partial owner stuff is like BS though. Like Will
what about
Smith
when they become coaches?
Owner of the Sixers, but like he's never around.
What about when they become like coaches or prominent figures for like I don't know.
No,
like
I think
Larry Bird.
If Larry Bird like coached the Lakers or something,
yeah, or like Michael Jordan with the Bobcats, like you know what I'm saying, or not the Bobcats, the Hornets, but like you know what I'm saying, like what about that?
I mean, not enough of a rivalry factor. I think
we've wasted too much time on this.
Yeah, probably.
So, but I was gonna say, so the Philadelphia Union lost the MLS Cup. The Phillies lost the World Series
on the same day that the Phillies lost the World Series.
The Eagles.
I mean,
let's
be clear though, that like the Union won. Like I have, like I like the Union. I cheer, but like it's nowhere. Like if we're talking about devastating
no, but
scale,
I'm just saying what close. Like what the tweets were and what the content has been made around. So the Union agreed like lowest level impact for most fans. No,
it ramped up.
Right.
It was like okay, that's a bummer. That sucks, but okay. Whatever.
Well, and then it led to the like if they lose the MLS Cup and the World Series on the same day, like like the Union loss was worse because of the World Series loss. But so
the Phillies lost. The series was over to me at that point anyway. I wasn't like just devastated they lost. I was more devastated about the game 5 or whatever it was. But also it was weird because the Eagles were playing that night or game 5.
Right. Game 5 was the Chas McCormick
Thursday
catch.
Night.
Right.
Yeah. And when the Eagles were playing, so it was like kind of weird because I was like couldn't really even fully focus on that anyway.
Right. All that happened this Eagles season. Back to your earlier point, but okay. So Phillies lost the World Series. Eagles lost the Super Bowl. Are you worried about the Sixers?
I mean, I am very confident the Sixers will not make the finals. I'm extremely. I mean, a team that has not done that since 2001. And also, if you talk about if we were talking about the Sixers at all, like if I was podcasting about them, like they are a bad vibe team. They're not a good vibe at all. There's a lot of big loser energy with that team and some of the players on that team.
Last thing on the Commanders before we like tie a bow on this. It was reported last week in the mix of everything that the Commanders might not pick up Chase Young's 5th-year option. We talked about that when he was, taking forever to come back. Like you kind of have to do it, but I get it if you're at least thinking about not doing it.
He's only been available for 26 or 27 out of 50 possible games in his career. I mean, yeah. And, he wasn't really playing well prior to he got hurt. I mean, he only had 1.5 sack before he got hurt in 2021. So it's not really like crazy to me that they wouldn't do that. I mean, I think you have to let it play out. I don't think you can just assume, especially, they have more information than we do. Maybe that recovery or that injury was very serious and they're kind of worried about what his future is going to look like. So, yeah, I think that's the right call.
We talked about this too. He's missed, I don't know what it is off the top of my head now, but he's missed like, I don't know, like 80% of divisional games. So you know what I'm saying? Like he's not even like a huge impact.
Against Eagles once or twice.
He didn't.
Twice.
I think he played in the first game against Dallas in 2021, but he's missed. He played in the last one, but the last one was inconsequential, obviously for them. But yeah, tough scene. Okay, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I don't think I don't know if you touched on Jalen Hurts specifically as much. I mean, you gave him credit. I'm not saying you didn't. I'm saying, like,
I mean,
how
phenomenal game.
did this change your outlook on him? Are you willing to admit he's the best quarterback in the NFC East?
Yes, I think he's clearly very good. I think we were both, maybe you more than me, wrong about him as far as what we said this time a year ago. He took the leap. I'm not gonna like pick apart the like lack of passing in this game, whatever. I mean, it wasn't required. That was always like the conversation, right? Like, well, we haven't seen it, but it hasn't been necessary. Blah blah
I mean,
blah.
he made high level throws in this game, like
No,
some
he
really
did.
incredible throws.
I love the decision on the AJ Brown touchdown. Like, I love the like give your guy a chance, type stuff.
That's a skill.
And
yeah,
he's a top. Trayvon Diggs actually tweeted about this right before like 10 minutes ago, real time. He's a top 5 quarterback. Like, we could sit here and debate, like, I would take Josh Allen or Joe, but like whatever. He's in that group. I mean, it's Mahomes in his like own universe, and then the conversation starts for like, who do you want next? You can make an argument for Allen, Burrow, Hurts. That's about it. I would put Dak on the next, kind of plane or wave, with maybe Trevor Lawrence is on his way there. Justin Herbert's there. Like, I don't put Justin Herbert in the same mix as I just said. We'll see. But he's very good. I do think regression's coming for the Eagles as a whole. That's not, again, like insult or anything, but like the rushing success will be an interesting thing to watch. I mean, like how teams attack the Eagles in 2023, how smart you have to be. I mean, his season in some ways was very similar to Dak's rookie season. And we saw the way the Cowboys played Dak be different and become different. And he became a better passer. And like a lot of those things improved, like you talked about, like elements and aspects of Jalen's game can improve and get better. So I'm interested to see him kind of take the next step. He's going to get the big contract, the bag, whatever. He deserves it. He is very, very, very good. And I'm genuinely interested to see what the team looks like with him having to be the driving force when the defense does regress, when Kelsey's gone or whatever the case may be. I mean, it is going to be Jalen Hurts' team. And I can tell you, as a team, as somebody who roots for the Cowboys, it's hard. It's hard when the quarterback has to be the main guy, because then you end up where we're at saying like, he needs help. And so that's, I think, my last thought is it's a really unfortunate loss, obviously, but you that it happened in his rookie contract window. That's another bitter pill to swallow. Like, this was the time, and you came so close. I mean, and there's no shame in that. It's just, it's tough.
It's a big missed opportunity, I think, along the lines of the ethos of this podcast, though. More than one thing can be true. It could also be the beginning of a Hurts window here for some time that sees, I'm not going to go and say it's, anything guaranteed to what the Chiefs have had, but, something where they're going to, multiple NFC title, like the 49ers have, they've made it there.
Granted, with like the complete opposite level of quarterback sustainability, but yeah,
yes,
totally.
But like in terms of being this NFC staying power, I do think nothing is guaranteed, but I do think because of the landscape and because of Hurts and some of the positives that this organization still has going for them moving forward, I think there is credence to them, not like guaranteeing they're the 1 seed every year, but being this like this team in the NFC for multiple seasons where they're a big factor, just like prior to this season, really. The Bucs were, and with Brady, and the Packers have been viewed that way for a long time, and the Rams were for a little bit there. Like they've, they're in that staying power kind of class for now until things change.
I feel very confident. I wrote an article, it was 5 thoughts after the Super Bowl, whatever, something like that, related to the Cowboys. And one of them was that it's a very good time to be a top team in the NFC, right? Like true or false, the 3 best teams in the conference are the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Niners.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, put them in whatever order you want, like as the season unfolds. Like they're like, if you had to give me those 3 or the field to win the conference, I would take the 3. You know what I mean?
Justin Fields.
I mean, not this coming year, but like maybe the Giants get aggressive. Maybe the Lions take a step. Maybe the Vikings get it together. Maybe the Rams kind of come back. Maybe the Seahawks get it. But like those are bigger maybe propositions for me. And so like I do think that each conference is kind of top heavy. Like you've got the 3 teams I mentioned in the NFC and the AFC. I mean, I would say the foils. I would say the Chiefs right now are akin to the Eagles, right? Like kind of the top team in the conference, and obviously the team that won the Super Bowl. I would say the Bengals are very akin to the Niners, right? Like kind of find a way to get it done, always like a super huge threat. And the Bills are the Cowboys, lots of potential, a little bit erratic, and right now has a quarterback that needs a little bit more help than the one main piece he has: Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, CeeDee Lamb in Dallas, and so those are the 6 teams. Again, I would almost take those 6 teams over the entire field of the NFL.
I think the field at the game at the Super Bowl, which is really bad, is still better than Justin Fields is as a quarterback.
Okay. Let's leave. Let's get out of here. Let's just do it.
I'm gonna exit out of the window here. Can
I
do
that?
Does that mess up the podcast if I just close the window?
Give us 2 words, please.
I'm tired.